Hi, my name is Akshara Srinivas, and I'm a ninth grader in Redmond, Washington. I found that in Washington, we will need about 1 million new homes by 2044. At the same time, there's pressure to make new housing more energy efficient and climate friendly, which can often slow down the building process and make it more costly. How can we meet urgent housing needs while still advancing our goals for renewable energy and environmental sustainability?
This is my favorite question of the day. And when I read it, I was just blown over because this is really the crux of what we're dealing with. We have really lofty goals of making sure that we have safe, healthy homes that are energy efficient, that can last for, 50 years is the average right now that building homes is tailored towards. And at the same time, we are in a housing shortage. We're in a housing crisis because of that shortage. Home ownership is out of reach for the vast amount of families in Washington state because we have so few of them. They're so expensive. And we make it very difficult to build housing and very expensive to build housing. We have, as government, a direct role in the process for creating housing and getting it on the market so people can live in it, rent it, and own it. And it's not just the energy efficiency requirements that add to the cost, but they do. And what I would say to that is we need to get better at looking at the impact of the policies that we create. For instance, if we upgrade our energy codes and our energy efficiency requirements and we go above the international standard, which we do typically as Washington state, the International Building Code has a standard, and then Washington typically goes, you know what, we're going to go above and beyond that. We have to look at what does that mean for the cost of building housing and what does that mean for how long it takes to build housing and it coming online and actually being available to people. Because right now, once you start the process of building a home to actually when someone actually gets into it, it's about 3 years. So there's a lot of things that can happen in 3 years. Costs go up. If you only have one supplier for the new type of energy efficient window in Washington, and that's the only supplier, there's now a line and they have a monopoly and the cost can go up. And that means it's going to be even more difficult to build housing. So that's something that we have to build into our process. If you look at other countries, they do it a little bit differently. Also, our environmental review, that's another thing that we can see create more time. And time is really the killer when it comes to constructing housing because it costs money. Builders have to get loans to purchase the labor, the materials, the impact fees, all of the additional things. And when you make that stretch out for even longer periods of time, it just makes all those costs go up. We also do things like create impact fees. So in Olympia, for example, my community, just to dig in the dirt to build one home, the cost is $80,000. When you add on top of that, the land, the workforce that you need, the labor, the materials, all of those things, the interest on your loan, you're now looking for a starter home in my community at $600,000, which is already unaffordable for most families. So what we have to do is we have to look at the cumulative impact of all of the policies that we've created that add to the requirements for what you can build, how long it takes, what are the requirements to do that, permitting, for example. Washington state cities have 180 days to turn around a permit, and they are actively not making that time frame. And they don't have repercussions really for not doing that. So that's a problem that we still are trying to address. I think that when you put an impact fee on a home and it's $80,000 just out of the gate, that is a philosophy that's premised behind the belief that growth pays for growth, which means when you buy a home, the cost that you're going to have to the system to use the infrastructure of the stormwater and transportation and all those things, you have to pay for that up front. However, I think that having population growth occur and people having enough housing for population growth is a societal good. It's a public good that we should all be invested in and we should all have. And so we should figure out a different way so that we're not providing a disincentive to get the housing that everybody needs. Everybody needs a home. Every single person has to go home at the end of the day. And the reality is that too many Washingtonians don't have that, or are making choices about not taking a job opportunity because they can't afford to live in the community where they want to work, or they have to, move their kids out to a different school district because they can't afford their rent increase. So we have a lot of work to do on that, and that's a primary focus of my committee and what we're going to be doing in the interim and then next session.
Well, this is an interesting question in that the dynamics of home building have changed considerably through the years. It was quite a few years ago where we had a real push to have energy efficient homes, and they were called super good sense homes, and they'd be we got to the point where we felt like they were too energy efficient. We had to actually loosen the standards somewhat so that we had fresh air in our homes, because they were so, you made them so efficient that they didn't have the proper air exchange. So there are a lot of balances that have to take place in even the health of the environment that you build. But specifically as it relates to building, we have most recently put more stringent energy standards on, which have gotten to the point where you have diminishing returns, where it costs you more than you're actually gaining in the benefits. So I think we need to be careful that we don't put so much, in the case of regulation or requirements for the home building, that we price people out of the market. I think that the energy efficiency, the renewable energy thing in the Pacific Northwest, we are so blessed to have hydropower, which has been supplying the bulk of the Pacific Northwest for many years, and so we do have relatively inexpensive power. So that is good that we have clean, renewable, efficient production of that energy, but we will be facing a real shortage of power as we move down the line here. So from a standpoint of actually making homes more efficient, we have a lot of new materials that are really creative, and that's great to get online. But what really seems to be a real sticking point right now are the regulations that we have put in place in an effort to, be very super sensitive, I guess, to the environmental impacts. We've actually precluded people from being able to, build, because we've priced them out of the market. Right now the regulations tend to be one of the biggest hurdles that people have to actually getting home ownership. So balancing the energy efficiency, being mindful of the climate friendly building materials, and also the affordability of those homes are really becoming more and more of a challenge. And that's something that we really need to be having a holistic conversation about, is how do these things overlap? How can we get to the point where people can afford to get into a home? They are building with new materials that really create that energy efficiency that we're seeking, and yet we're not having a negative impact on the environment.